I'd like to call to order the special public meeting for Monday, May 23rd, 2022 of the Lower Moreland Township Board of School Directors. Mrs. Natter, would you please say the pledge?
Good evening, Lower Moreland. Good evening, Lower Moreland Township School District community. My name is Dr. Scott David Heiser, Superintendent of Schools, and I'd like to thank you for attending this evening's special meeting of the Board of School Directors. We'd like to remind our board members and members of the public that this meeting is being live streamed on our district YouTube channel, and that a recording of the meeting will be posted on our school board website within 48 hours following this meeting. We'd like to welcome our board members and members of the public joining us this evening. To our board members, please be reminded that for sound purposes, you must turn on your microphone by tapping the touchpad and speak directly into it for the sound to be audible, not only for our in-person community members here in the auditorium, but also for anyone listening to the live stream. After speaking, please also mute your microphone by once again pressing on the touchpad. And for our public and our board members, as you can see, there are two board members who are joining us virtually per board policy. And I would ask that Mr. Steinberg and Mr. Berardi, you do the same with regard to your microphones. Mr. McGuinn, would you please take the roll call of the board?
Certainly. Mrs. Baker.
Present.
Mr. Berardi.
Present.
Dr. Butler.
Present.
Ms. Cannon.
Present.
Dr. Cohen. Mr. Geiger.
Present.
Dr. Lee.
Present.
Mrs. Natter.
Present.
Mr. Steinberg. I can see Mr. Steinberg.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. David Heiser, all 9 board members are present. 2, Mr. Berardi and Mr. Steinberg joining us virtually.
Thank you. Take the roll call of the cabinet members who will be joining us this evening. Mrs. Galdo.
Present.
Mrs. Drennan.
Present.
Mr. McGuinn.
Here.
Mr. Giordano.
Present.
And Dr. Hilt.
Here.
Thank you. Takes us to the public comment section of the agenda.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to read a statement before we begin. Please remember that every voice is important, but no voice is greater than another. I remind everyone to please wear a properly fitting mask while you are both sitting and delivering public comment. Regardless of this evening's outcome, we are required to wear masks in school. Please respect this because it is a board action. The board is comprised of 9 members in which the public has placed its confidence. Be respectful of each member, regardless if you agree or disagree with his or her decision. Please do not direct any particular comment to a specific board member. Please use a civil tone. Refrain from heckling, yelling, and disturbing the process. If these behaviors should occur, I will adjourn the meeting. Lastly, let's remember that we're all part of the amazing Lower Moreland community. I'm confident that no one moved here so they could argue and malign each other. When all said is done, we're not just residents. More importantly, we are all neighbors. So once again, I would have asked that we use decorum when we are speaking in this auditorium. Thank you.
For purposes of public comment, there are 2 microphones. So if you're flanked on this side, there's a microphone easy to get to down at the base of the seating area. Our first speaker this evening is Lila Naidan.
Can everyone hear me? Thanks everyone for this opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Lila Naidan and I'm the parent of a kindergartner at Pine Road Elementary. I'm also an English professor who has won teaching and mentoring awards for my commitment to my students. I'm someone who cares deeply about education. And one thing I know well is that students need to feel and be safe to learn. I've learned that that idea of safety means different things in different contexts. For example, when I'm working with minoritized students, I need to recognize and address bigotry when I see and hear it. I also need to have a commitment to learning about my own privilege and missteps. I make them and everyone does. And when I'm teaching in the unprecedented time of COVID-19, I need to recognize that not all of my students come to my classrooms with the same healthy bodies or with healthy households that can weather the storm of infection, even in light of the excellent vaccines that we now have available through the work of dedicated scientists. I'm here today to ask you to create the safest possible learning conditions for my daughter during this pandemic. She has struggled with health issues all year, as have I. I've made trips to CHOP more often than any parent should have to. And I don't want my daughter or anyone in my household to struggle because we're not taking precautions that we can easily take to keep her and other students and their families safe. To weather the storm of this pandemic, we need to work together as a community. We need to commit ourselves to safety so all of our students can learn equitably and have their health. Please do what's necessary tonight and don't get bullied into ignoring me and my daughter and other kids and parents who need you. We need you. Please do the ethical thing, the only truly ethical thing, and maintain mandatory masking during times of high COVID transmission in Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rachel Zauberos.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening to all members of the school board and all the parents who are here tonight in attendance. My name is Rachel Zauberos. I currently have 2 children who are freshmen at high school, and I've had 4 children that have come through the Lower Moreland Township School District. I am currently enrolled in a community college to earn a degree in psychology, and I'm here tonight because I feel pretty strongly about what's going on in our community, in our school district. So I think that I'd just like to highlight tonight that we actually have a lot more in common than we maybe all realize. And we are all here this evening because we really do care about the same thing, and that is our children. It's important to realize that we may think differently, we may have and make different choices, but in the end, that's what unites us because we embrace our diversity. But we do need to respect one another and those differences. 2 months ago, or about 2 months ago, or when the mask mandate was lifted, the children were asked to respect those who still wished to remain wearing masks. So tonight I'm here to ask for the same respect for those children and members of the community who wish to remove their masks. They should not be intimidated or threatened in any way for making a choice that they feel benefits them in their health, their mind, and their body. If you believe in the vaccines, the boosters, and the masks, then there should be some confidence that you should have in feeling that you are protected and in your own personal health and choices. There is an awful lot of information that has been in the media and the news over the last 2 years in this ever-changing world of COVID. And I could stand here tonight and give you many statistics, and equally somebody could return that and give me many, many statistics that would oppose that. So in the end, we have to rely on ourselves and our own knowledge and our own abilities to be able to navigate through this world of information and use our common sense to make decisions that are best for ourselves. We must trust ourselves, but also others, and we must respect them in making their decisions and earn and ask for the same respect in making decisions for ourselves. I ask you, why, if you moved to this country, you chose to do so. And if you were born in this country, why you are proud to be an American. I believe that you would answer that you are proud because of the liberty and the freedoms that you can exercise in this great country. And we must do everything to protect those rights. Therefore, we must vote to stop the mandates that divide us. Instead, we need to give people the choice and the freedom to do what's best for themselves, for their physical and their mental health.
Ms. Zauberos, if you can finish up, please.
So let us come together to provide educational options and support. And remember that America is built on the foundation of freedom, and we can never, ever lose sight of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jim McAssey.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to express my support for the current mask mandate. My name is Jim McAssey, and my 6-year-old is Pine Road proud. We moved here before our daughter was born, specifically because of the schools, and we have not been disappointed. We love her teacher, Mrs. Arnwine, with a passion, and we love this district. I wish I didn't have to be here tonight, though. I wish I was at home practicing my daughter's sight words and getting her to eat her vegetables and trying to brush her teeth. That is a struggle enough. And you know the drill. Instead, I feel like I have to be here tonight. There's some facts that I'd like you to consider before you vote on anything today. Number one is that COVID cases are rising drastically in the US right now. You know this. The average as of yesterday was over 108,000 new cases every day, which is over 750,000 new cases per week. This is a vast undercount, though, because so many people are getting tested at home and not reporting it. So experts quoted today in Fortune magazine estimate that the actual number is closer to 500,000 new positive cases in this country every day. And we are not in a good place. But the second thing is that positives are not the only thing that's rising. COVID hospitalizations have increased by 20% in the last 2 weeks. Third thing is that the transmissibility of each new variant has been increasing, right? i.e. more and more transmissible. So, the fourth thing is, unfortunately, the vaccine efficacy, it wanes over time, right? Scientists know this. 5 is that, we're currently dealing with this hazardous cocktail of 1, increased transmissibility, 2, waning vaccine efficacy, and 3, now some of you want us to swallow a poison pill of relaxing mitigation. So the last thing is that COVID is not like a cold, okay? It's not the flu. Sadly, there can be long-term effects of COVID-19 illness, such as an increased risk of coronary heart disease. And there's new research just recently that suggests a possible increase in infertility in women after they catch it, even after asymptomatic or mild cases. And a major study published in Nature magazine this month shows that the COVID-19 impact on the brain is severe and can significantly impact the thinning tissue and disrupt functions that control both smell and cognitive abilities. We are, in fact, just beginning to understand the long-term effects of COVID. Friends, I'm very upset because I feel some of you are playing politics with the health and safety of my daughter. A school shouldn't be a front for any partisan games. It feels to many of us here that some of you are trying to gain some political points by pretending that COVID has disappeared. A school should be a place of learning, compassion, and love, learning your letters. Not a place for partisan fighting, not a place for science denying, and certainly not a place to take risks with children's health and safety. Don't go back on your word.
Mr. McAssey, if you can finish.
I'm done. Don't weaken the mask policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Danilo Diaz.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Danny Diaz. I'm a resident of 15 years here in the township, also an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. But that really doesn't mean anything when it comes to COVID, right? Everybody gets COVID. My immigrant status, my minority status has nothing to do with COVID. So treat me as a citizen, as a human being, not as an immigrant per se. I wanted to state quickly that currently there's no state, local, or federal agencies requiring or mandating a mask. That is a true statement. If it's not, I would like the board or the administration to correct me on it. I think that you owe it to this community to provide any type of evidence that makes you want to go outside the official guidance from agencies, from your own administration recommendations, to implement your own policies. Your job is to protect all students holistically, their educational, their physical well-being, their emotional well-being. You get the point. It's not to impose your political or personal views on other families. The harm that you are causing is real, is measurable. You have been given and presented with the statistics. You have heard from numerous families about the direct personal effects. I can tell you that both of my daughters have been affected by this. I've emailed you about it. Yesterday, when I was talking to my honor society student, 8th grader, about mask mandates again, she was like, Dad, well, she said, Papi, for 2 months, I've just been doing so well. I'm doing so well. And I'm afraid, I'm nervous that I'm going to go back to where I was 3 months ago. Does that matter at all? Does she matter? You have been given those statistics and stories, and it just seems, and excuse me, I don't want to make this personal, but after 2.5 years, it just seems like you just don't care. It seems like you don't care. Last Friday, I got to witness or go to the wonderful play put on by the middle school. And I'm sitting there wondering, man, what kind of technology does this board have that can schedule COVID to not infect anyone on Friday, but to infect people on Monday? It makes no sense. It's illogical. The kids are watching that. They're watching you. It makes no sense. It's hypocritical. It's also hypocritical when I walk around the township in the community in events and I see members of this board enjoying life without a mask at the polls, at events here at the school just last week. But now you want to tell my kid to mask up, to shut up and listen, or to write down their names. Ignoring, just 1 second, please. Ignoring.
Mr. Diaz, if you can finish up, please.
Yes, one last comment. Taking names of kids who refuse to wear a mask today, ignoring whether or not those kids had IEPs that accommodated them for not wearing a mask. You can do better.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mark Carroll.
Board members and the community. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I don't really have too many prepared notes, but there are a few things I'd like to say. Since this pandemic started 2 years ago, I believe that myself, my children, my wife, my family, we did our part. We did the virtual, we did the lockdown. It's been 2 years now. That's a whole year of virtual that my kids are never going to get back. And my kids suffered learning. It was so difficult. My little guy was in kindergarten. It was horrible. Now they're back in school. Everything's going good. And now we want to go back and switch back to masks. I want to appeal to the school board for logic to prevail. The students are in Wawa. The students are playing sports, the basketball courts, the soccer. There's kids wrestling. You know, in this auditorium, there's plays happening. People aren't wearing masks. Well, why all of a sudden now that the virus isn't going to spread in the classroom, but it's not going to spread in the classroom, but it's going to spread outside? It doesn't make sense. I like what a couple of the previous people have said. You know, this country was built on freedom. I believe that every parent should have the freedom to choose what they want to do for their kids. They shouldn't be mandated, especially if the CDC is saying it's a recommendation. Us as parents know what's best for our children. And for that, I'm asking the school board to please vote to make it optional for everyone in this auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Heather Soras.
Good evening. My name is Heather Soras. I'm here to speak in support of masks being optional in our school community. Education is not one size fits all. I believe that our district does a great job of acknowledging this and provides programs to suit the diverse needs, educational needs of our students, and I thank you for that. Part of the school district's role is also to provide a physically safe environment for our school community. Handicap accessible buildings that are free of environmental toxins, along with cleanly restrooms, lunchrooms, and workspaces are examples that fall in this category. It is not the role of the school district to make personal health choices for students. That responsibility belongs to the parents. In every school district, there have always been families who have immunocompromised children. These families have always made adjustments in their lives for the benefit of their child's health. School has always been a risk. I am talking about the children who are going through chemo or are recovering from it, those who are awaiting surgery, those who have heart disorders, lung diseases, and are at high risk of severe illness from anything floating around schools at any time. These families have been living the quote unquote pandemic life before COVID was around and probably will continue to live cautiously indefinitely. My family falls in this category. Prior to the existence of COVID, no school board member would have agreed to impose rules like masking and distancing for the benefit of immunocompromised students. And none of the families like my own would have asked you to do so. But now that all parents have experienced some level of fear for their child's health due to COVID, there are some that feel it is okay to impose on another's individual's personal health choices. I find this hypocritical and insulting. The risk of severe illness and death due to COVID in children is barely calculable. Some experts say that it is low for even immunocompromised children. In contrast, the families that I highlighted have always dealt with a high risk of illness and even risk of death. Fortunately, even though COVID cases have risen again, the rate of death in our county is at an average of 1 or 0 per day. It is a fact that some students are negatively impacted by mask wearing, whether it be physically or educationally. Please respect that the choice for a student to wear a mask or not to is a personal health choice based on an individual's needs and is not part of the school district's role to decide on. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Colleen Collins.
Good evening. I don't feel the need to have to introduce myself since this is literally the 5th time since September that I've had to get up here and beg and plead for my 4 kids' rights, most specifically my 15-year-old who has indeed spent the last 9 years at CHOP battling brain cancer. I am done explaining myself. This time I want to address, the 5 board members who have voted to keep masks on these children. I emailed you Friday with no response. Are you only selectively answering emails? Because I haven't heard from any of you. I'm assuming you're offended. Well, guess what? I'm offended that you keep doing this to these children and to my children. It's unethical. I've learned that you base your decisions on politics and politics alone. Your minds are made up prior to us walking into this auditorium. Your agenda is set, and it is apparent that you don't entertain any opposing point of view. If this was such an emergency on Friday, when they announced that Montgomery County was in a high COVID level, why was there a mask optional play Friday and Saturday night that indeed brought revenue in to the school? But here we are 48 hours later, and we're back to square one with masks and 14 days left of school. This is time our kids are not getting back. What you are doing is illegal and no longer about our kids' safety. We want choice. We're Americans, and this is the United States of America. My family and I are done playing your games. We're done. We're taxpayers, just as like everyone else in this district. We will not comply, and legally, you cannot enforce it. You do not make medical decisions for my children, nor will you ever. The surrounding school districts in Monco are mask optional. And guess what? They have more students than Lower Moreland. How are we any different? We're not. And finally, if this ruling is not rescinded, we will be seeking legal counsel with other families against your tyranny. And the ball is already rolling. So bring it. Have a good night.
Our next speaker is Jessica Durr.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Durr. I basically just have a lot of questions. We had this plan in place and we voted on it before. So I'm just curious as to what changed. You know, we went into high levels and no one expected that to happen. I understand that. No one wanted that to happen, but we're here. So all of the people who didn't want masks, why wasn't there discussion happening between then and now? You know, you say that your children cannot, thank you. Said that their children can't wear masks. They're having problems with the masks. I feel for that. Why aren't they getting exemptions? They say it's hard. Well, should it just be a doctor's note? And can they get that? That they should be able to do that. We shouldn't be having these fire drills. I feel like this is what is causing the divide in the community. To have these rush decisions made that people think, well, there was nothing wrong Friday, there's something wrong today. No, the levels went up. It is a problem. We shouldn't be having this fire drill in the community to bring up all of this anger. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. I just don't understand if this is where we are, why aren't we polling the community? If you're answering because people are angry, because people are sending you emails or they're calling and they're here yelling, send out a poll to everybody. Let everyone have a voice, not just those who are taking the time to email, who are more eloquent. I am absolutely not. Or coming to the meetings. Some people can't. So send out a poll, see what the parents want. Thank you.
Before we continue, I'm really going to appeal to you not to heckle the speaker. I'm appealing to you, and I know they can come through. Everyone has the right to come up here and voice their opinion, so please do not heckle.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Corcoran. Mr.
Hello,
Butler, you want?
all. Is it good? Yep. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Liz. I'm a junior at the high school, and just thank you guys so much to all the school board members for your dedication to us, the students, the parents, the families during such unprecedented times for the past couple of years. It's been crazy, and I'm new here, and I'm loving how dedicated you are to helping the students learn in the best way possible. As stated earlier, a couple months ago with the health and safety plan, being in the high zone of transition means we have to mandate masks in our schools, as you guys stated. And despite these special circumstances that I feel very sorry for that people have to deal with, it is rational to mandate masking. And I'm wearing one today, and I don't want to be wearing it, and I don't like it, and I can't breathe in it, but I understand why I have to. But I want to urge you to consider the conflicts that arise with mandating masking in our schools. A, it's a mandate, it's not enforced. And speculation has come that students will be reported to admin for not wearing masks. And that arises conflicts with student-teacher relationships and student-student relationship and contributes to a lot of division in the school. And although I have stated that I understand the importance of mandating masking, and I would like to mandate masking, one size does not fit all, unfortunately. And as stated by a parent a couple seconds ago, a poll, awesome idea. Get input from the community. As much as it's super important to adhere to health and safety regulations, it's also important to mitigate this conflict and this lack of transparency and this division, because it's a school and it's a safe place for me to come here to learn and to connect with my teachers and my fellow classmates. I don't want to argue about who's wearing a mask and who's not wearing a mask. I just want us to be safe and healthy. And it's an issue here, and we all recognize that. So I think the best way to mitigate that is to encourage input from the community. So I really thank you guys for letting me speak today, and I hope that you consider my points. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ren Abraham.
Hi, my name is Ren Abraham. I'm a parent of 2 Pine Ridge students. They are in 2nd grade and kindergarten. I'd like to thank the majority of the school board for their commitment to doing what's best for our community and following recommendations from the CDC and the MCOPH, which are to wear masks under a high level of COVID based on cases and now also hospitalizations. Yes, I said recommendations, because neither the CDC nor the MCOPH has required masking in schools at any point this school year. So when you hear the anti-masking minority talk about health organizations moving away from a mandate and towards a recommendation, that's simply false. It's always been you, the school board, who have decided to implement the recommendations of the CDC and the MCOPH by requiring masks when levels reach epidemic proportions. The only external mandate that we've had all year came from Governor Wolf, but that was only after you, the school board, had already implemented a health and safety plan that included required masking. The anti-masking minority also talks about parent choice. What they're really saying is that masking should come down to personal preference. But guess what? No one wants to wear a mask. They don't look good. They don't feel good. We mask because we understand that masking is a coordinated public health measure that's aimed at collectively curbing community spread when COVID is high. Yes, the pandemic has gone from epidemic to endemic. No one disputes that. But that doesn't rule out the possibility of regional spikes and community outbreaks. When spikes or outbreaks occur, our policies must be robust enough to meet the moment, justify temporarily requiring masks until cases and hospitalizations have sufficiently abated. When the level drops back to medium or low, it's completely reasonable to return to optional masking. Let me say again that any argument for personal preference has no place in a public debate over public health in a place of public education. The other fatal flaw in the anti-masker argument for parent choice, quote unquote, is that it doesn't even exist. It's a fiction, a fairy tale. Regardless of what parents may desire, the reality is that parents do not actually make any choices when masking is optional. When children as young as 5 years old walk into their classrooms, it is they who are making personal and public health decisions for themselves and their community, not their parents. When masking is optional, kids will naturally and understandably follow their own personal preference to go maskless, often accelerated by peer pressure from other students. So instead of letting students choose, we, the adults in the room, should choose for them. But the only way that we as parents actually make any real decisions for our kids is by making requirements. Otherwise, parent choice is just empty rhetoric.
Mr. Abraham, if you can finish up, please.
Sure. In conclusion, we live in a democratic society. We don't have to agree on every policy in order to live at peace with each other. Disagreement is not division. We can vote differently and peacefully accept the will of the majority, whatever it may be. We all want what's best for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gina Mamakoyan. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Hi, my name is Gina. I'm a parent of a 3rd grader at Pine and a 7th grader at Murray Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. First, I would like to thank all the board members who did not vote in favor of mandating masks. And to those of you who did, you must understand that you're not really protecting the students or the community. Cloth masks are not effective at mitigating spread. Yet that is the type of face covering that the majority will wear. COVID is basically endemic. It's not going anywhere. It's likely will be a seasonal virus. If you have a reason to be concerned, please wear a mask. Please have your child wear a mask. Make it a properly fitted KN95 type mask because those masks actually work. But do not make it mandatory for everyone to wear some type of face covering to just check some box. You do what's right for you and your family. I'll do what's right for me and my family. Let's agree to disagree and still respect each other's decisions. We are all endeavoring to do what's best in our personal, unique situations. My decision to not mask does not impact your health if you wear the proper mask, and my wearing a cloth mask will not help you all that much either. The reinstatement of the mask mandate is a farce at worst, and at best, a false sense of security. I respectfully ask you to please vote in favor of amending the current health and safety plan to eliminate the mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ernest Mamakoyan.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would also like to put in my word for against the mandate, but I would like to ask questions. Actually, I would like to pose a couple of questions. First, has already been said, where is the evidence that wearing masks the way people actually wear them and the kind of mask that they actually wear is protective? There's unequivocal academic literature now in Nature, which by the way was mentioned before, that cloth masks don't do anything. You need to be wearing a clinical grade, hospital grade mask. And at that point, you can just protect yourself. The other question is, are you okay with the hypocrisy of everything that's going on, of the different behavior that people, they walk out and they behave completely different. The same people who are for these mandates, their behavior, their personal behavior is completely inconsistent. Politicians have been caught in this, and everybody else has too. Typically, the the more fervent you are a supporter for mandates and forcing people to do it, the more glaring these inconsistencies are in your behavior. And finally, when does this end? Where's the end of the road for this? This is a highly invasive personal mandate. When does this end? People have said several times that the virus has become more transmissible. And yeah, that's true. But what they fail to mention that it's also become far less deadly, which is exactly what you expect and what the experts said in the very beginning, in the beginning of 2020, that this is how viruses develop. This is the evolution that they go through. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jen Berman.
Good evening. My name is Jen Berman, and I have 2 boys at Murray Ave. I'm here tonight advocating for choice. My family is done playing pandemic. We need to learn how to live with COVID, and it's imperative that we provide our kids with some sense of normalcy. It is not normal to force kids to switch back and forth every other month. In fact, normalcy might look different in each household. In my household, that means no masks. Masking is highly stressful for my children. Masking has been detrimental mentally and physically to them, but I'm in full support of families who choose to send their children to school in masks. Those who feel protected by masks and believe in their efficacy should have the choice to continue to wear them. If my child is not wearing a mask and your child is, then your child is protected if masks work, right? Currently, in all areas of our society, people have choice. Some choose to wear masks, and in my observation, most don't. Even the CDC currently recommends choice. They are not encouraging mandates. For those board members, as well as the administration who have consistently voiced their support of parental choice, I thank you. I hope that the members of the board who are still wanting to enforce this mask mandate start to consider what it means to parents to have a choice for our own children. You should not have the right to make medical decisions for our children. You should no longer be allowed to make decisions based upon your own personal agendas. We as parents are the only ones who know what is best for our family. Please vote tonight to allow parents to continue to have a choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anna Yakubov.
Hello. So my son, he's in 1st grade. He came home from school on Friday. And the first thing he tells me, he's like, their desks were physically separated. He can no longer sit with his friends at lunch. They have to be 2 to a table, and everything is going back to the way it was. And for me, this is heartbreaking because I am much more concerned about the long-term effects and damage from masking and social distancing for these little kids and other children than I am about COVID. 75% of children already had COVID in this country. 75% of children already had the infection. This is an unreasonable and request and mandate that you're making at this time. And I didn't prepare anything, but I don't understand why this is happening because no one is mandating. Even CHOP, I emailed Dr. Rubin, he responded, and he told me that CHOP is not endorsing mask mandates. It is clear. I respect everyone's decision. I love this community. We moved here because we love it. I love my neighbors. I would never want to do anything to harm anyone else's child. And it really hurts me that people on this board imply that somehow people who don't support masks want to hurt other people. We do not. We want what's best for everyone. We're not trying to, we care about the immunocompromised, we care about the elderly, we care about our families. And there are many, just because we don't agree on this one thing does not mean that we don't care about our community. And another thing is I've tried to always be respectful. I've emailed things that I find informative from scientific journals to people on this board, and there are 5 members who never get back to me. And they don't provide me with information of why they're making decisions. And it's bizarre. It really is. Like, there's obviously research on both sides that people use to support their points. And I try to present why I'm coming from my point of view, but I don't get anything back from why you decide to do this. You don't engage in any type of dialogue. Why? That's my question. Like, why can't we have a respectful conversation? There is no conversation. I state things and it just feels like it falls on deaf ears.
Jacopo, if you can finish up, please.
Yes. So, out of all the age groups, children are the least affected by COVID. That is a fact. And they're probably the most affected by these COVID restrictions. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is, I believe this is Jim and Ma. Jim Ma, is that correct?
Good evening, everyone. And my name is Jing Ma. I have been living in Lowmorland for 10 years and I have a daughter in high school. And until today, it has been 2.5 years after the breakout of COVID. And until today, COVID has claimed more than 1 million US citizens' life. So the danger is real. And I feel the pain of the kids has been traumatized by the isolation caused by the COVID. I also feel the pain of the family who lost their relatives. But when the danger is high, the risk is high, I think people have common sense, or at least I think it's important we take some necessary preventive measures. People have their own reason to favor or against the mask, but we all know mask is effective. CDC have different things. I don't want to talk about this kind of statistics. I just want to show some common sense. So I can't find a pack of cigarettes, and I just print out. This is a smoking cigarette. And my question to ask here, can I smoke here? I think the Mr. Principal and Mr. Superintendent may tell me, no, you can't, the school's rule. And I may follow up, it's my health, my willing, my money. Can I do that, please? I think the superintendent and Mr. Principal tell me, no, it's for public health, public safety. It's override your own option. I think it's the same thing. No one wants secondhand smoke from me, right? I think the same thing. No one wants the COVID virus spread from other people. Without a mask, anyone can get and spread virus easily. It's clear, it's common sense. And when the risks are high, we should think about other people. It's pain, I know. I wear a mask every day, I know, but it's necessary. When the risk is low, we can resume normal life, please. There's only 20 days left for this school year. Is it really necessary we change things? We get this message to kids just confusing, mask, no mask, mask, no mask. It's really necessary to change the policy within 20 days. By the way, I don't smoke. Thank you. I wish our school board would think about this when you vote. Can I smoke here? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Ruddick.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm sure you all remember me because I've spoken before. I didn't prepare a speech tonight. I just have to ask, why is it that every school in Montgomery County, every school is dropping the mandates because there's no mandates, but yet at Lower Moreland, we're still considering mandates. It makes me wonder if the other school boards, they just don't care about the kids. Is that maybe what it is? Like they don't care about their health and safety? I highly doubt that. I find it odd. And you have to understand if we question why you would want to have like mandates when there are no mandates. Their mandates are done. And I have 3 children. I have a 21-year-old stepdaughter. I have a 16-year-old daughter who isn't in the district. She's in private high school, and I have a 3rd grader at Pine Road. And I've taught my kids, all 3 of them, to always do the right thing and to be respectful. My son went to school today without a mask on. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 14 days left in the school year. And my son will not be wearing a mask into school. He won't. He's 8. And if you need to punish him, then do what you need to do. There's 14 days left. You can suspend him 14 times and he's going to be there the next morning without a mask. We're done. We've done everything. We've complied. We've respected everyone else's wishes. Every rule you've put into place, we have never once not followed the guidelines. And we're just not anymore. There's 14 days left in the school, and other people are saying there's 20 days left. So please keep our children safe. I don't feel that our children aren't safe. And I think that maybe you need to look to other school districts and see what they're doing, because it's not what you're doing. It just makes me question it. That's all. So if you want to suspend him, give him detention, whatever you need to do. He's 8 years old. So I guess you can deal with that, because right now I'm done. No more masks for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Donna Horvath.
Hello, my name is Donna Horvath. I have lived in Lower Moreland for the last 18 years. I have 3 girls, 2 of whom go to this district, 1 in high school and 1 in middle school. And I have 1 that goes to Quaker School in Horsham, which, by the way, does not have a mask mandate. I would like to speak about the return of the mask mandate. The email that the superintendent sent came out on Friday, advising that this mandate was going to be in effect on Monday, the 23rd. However, that same day, Murray Avenue was having the theater production of Annie Jr. Hardly anyone was wearing a mask or social distancing. Everyone was enjoying the play and each other's company, lining up to purchase snacks at intermission. Afterwards, hugging each other and chit-chatting. And that includes the principal, Mrs. Dilks. If there was such a threat, why wasn't the play canceled? Or does COVID know not to target students until Monday morning? I can tell you why it wasn't canceled. Money. It's all about money. People were paying admission and buying snacks. We're 2 years and 2 months into this pandemic. If masks worked, they would have worked 2 years ago. If vaccines worked, we would not need to wear masks. Our children are just starting to heal from this nonsense. There's only a few weeks left of school. Why would you ever want to do this to them? They don't want it, and we don't want it. My youngest daughter developed anxiety from wearing a mask. Her face would break out, and she would constantly complain of headaches and dizziness. I provided a note to Mrs. Dilks explaining that she should not wear a mask, and she was still forced to wear one. And now that she hasn't worn one in a couple of months, I'm not about to force her to wear one again. My family brought me here 32 years ago from the former USSR. We escaped from a communist country when I was 12 years old so that my sister and I would live in a country where people make their own decisions about what they wanted to do, and that our future children would not have to suffer like we did. Never in a million years we would ever thought that in 2022, this would happen in the United States. My children deserve to have a choice. Our children deserve to have a choice. This is United States of America, and we all should have the right to choose what is right for ourselves. And this mandate is once again dividing us, dividing this community and dividing our children, and there's no need for that. I'm against the mask mandate and will never again force my children to wear one again. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Washan Akalov.
Okay. Hello, board and audience members. My full name is Ravshanbek Safarovich Ichilov, but you could call me Ravi. I came here in the 6th grade with a mask. I found it really hard to read the emotions of others. I only got to see a fraction of what my friends looked like. Masks are stifling. It's the summer now. It's getting really hot outside. It gets hot in the classrooms that don't have proper ACs. And if you start getting sweaty, well, just hope your mask doesn't get wet and dirty and just rub off on your face. Masks also muffle your voice. Back when masks weren't mandatory, it was an uncommon occurrence for students to have to repeat themselves several times in order for the teachers to hear them. After all, masks make your voice quieter to the point of ineligibility. I personally believe that all people should have a choice on whether or not they should wear masks. We're in America. We should have our freedom to choose. That's all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathy Barnett.
Hello, everyone. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, I am so happy to hear the dialogue that is taking place, but to the board, I want to ask you a question. Why do you think you love my children more than I do? Why do you think you care more about my children than I do? I believe that if parents are given the best information that's available, 9 out of 10 times we will do what is necessary for our children. I can assure you, you do not love my children more than I do. You do not care more about my children's health than I do, right? And yet, time and time again, what we find with school boards and teachers is that you're operating outside of your pay grade. Overwhelmingly, parents send their children to school for you to teach them reading, writing, arithmetic, throw some civics in there, some social study, PE, and then send our children back home to you. We have doctors for our children. We don't need you to assume that role, quite frankly. I heard so many, just very wrong things. I heard someone call our nation a democracy. Let's take a poll. Newsflash, we're a republic, meaning we have laws. right? We have laws. It's called the Constitution. And your feelings, how you feel about your children, what you want for your children does not trump what I want, right? Because when your rights and freedoms begin to infringe upon my rights and freedom, this is when we're supposed to have a conversation, not a mandate. Mandates are not laws. So you make your mandates, but you need to be prepared. No more. No more. We started off 2 years ago. Remember 2 years ago, they told us 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into 2 years. Now we're at 2 weeks again. We have 2 weeks. And then our kids get to go on break. And now you come and tell us, just 2 weeks, please. Just 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks, please. Be prepared. My babies will not be wearing a mask, and they will not be suspended. And we will be filing a lawsuit. No more to any of this foolishness. The overwhelming majority of you who are wearing these paper masks, it is like trying to, what's the word I had earlier today? Is blocking the virus with a plain mask is like trying to block sand with a chain link fence. It does not work. It is nothing but psychosis. And you're putting that onto our children. Brown University did a study. Those children born after the pandemic, their IQ dropped 2 standard deviations compared to those born before the pandemic. The UK did a study, and all they found, it was 5 zeros on the morbidity of children, 0.000005%. Statistically, 0 is the impact that this virus has on our children.
Ms. Barnett,
So
you
be
can finish up,
prepared.
please.
Yes, I will. Be prepared. You make your mandates, and we're not complying. No more. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marina Mizik. Is that correct?
Hello, everyone. My name is Marina Misuk, and my daughter goes to 7th grade in Murray Avenue. Thank you for giving me the time to speak to you about this very important topic. As many of you are aware, and many more are becoming aware, based on the many studies of masks done before COVID and during COVID. The fact is that they simply do not work for the purpose of stopping the transmission of COVID, meaning that forcing our kids to cover their faces will negatively impact their social interactions, inhibit healthy breathing, and cause skin irritation. And for what? To give some people unfounded security so they can feel safe, but not be safer? I really hope you can make the right choice and free our children's beautiful faces. Thank you. And I know you will make the right choice for our children. They need to have a choice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Shannon Lindsay.
I never thought I'd have to give my 2nd grader a lesson on civil disobedience, but here we are. I prepared my son for what today would be like and how to politely but firmly decline any offer of a mask. Waiting for the bus, I got down to his eye level. I put his face in my hands and I said, "You can do this. Just say no thanks. If someone says you're going to the office, or you're going to be in trouble, or we're going to call your mom, it's going to be okay." And he gave me the perfect response this morning. He said, "Mom, if someone says something to me, I'm going to say, do whatever you have to." When I got the message from Mr. Cole this morning, the text message saying that my son did not comply, I felt so much better. I felt so much better knowing I immediately felt better knowing that my son did what we discussed. So thank you. I learned today that my son will listen to me when he is faced with a difficult or uncomfortable situation. I learned he can advocate for himself and not feel like he has to go along with the crowd. I learned a lot today about my son, so thank you so much. I don't know how any of you plan on voting tonight, and I don't care. In the words of my son, do whatever you have to do. But today we're drawing a line in the sand. He will never wear a mask again.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Hoke.
The last time I spoke, actually, real quick, I apologize for my attire. I'm coming from one of the 8 teams I coach. But I think that's important to mention because I feel like I've only been here. Next week will be 2 years in this community. I'm very new here, but I've learned and got to know a lot of people in my short time. I really truthfully think that, especially with the kids, I know what they're looking for. I know what bothers them because I coach a lot. Again, I coach 8 teams. Plus, I'm commissioner for like 47 divisions at HVA. I talk to a lot of the kids. I know what's going on. And what was interesting was somebody said earlier that the kids would give into the peer pressure. But my kids didn't wear a mask today. And that was their choice. They approached me last night, said, I want to wear one. So we talked through the process. My daughter, who's literally the sweetest girl in the world, anyone who knows that, she was like heckled by kids today. Why aren't you wearing a mask? Put a mask on. And what's interesting, because of all those teams I coach, I can confirm that did not happen when we went optional. The kids who went optional were respectful of the mask wearing kids. That was not the case today. And if you recall, when I spoke last time, I didn't speak to convince anymore. I spoke about our community coming back together, because as you leave these kind of things, we do have to come back together. And the reality is, Jen Cannon knows it, Dr. D knows it, Mike Berardi knows it, because since the pandemic, in my mind, ended, we took the mask off. We've had a lot of school events. I've seen the 3 of you at those events. So I know that the 3 of you know what's going on in the community right now. I haven't seen a lot of you at them. So how do you know what the people want? You don't need a survey if you get out there. I've seen them at the Phillies game for Pine Road. I've seen them at the 8th grade basketball game. These are all events at culture night. The craziest thing happened. Someone who 3 months prior reported me as a Facebook bully, their spouse came and talked to me for 10 minutes. We were coming back together, people. I'm no longer a bully. That was a joke. Everyone laughed. So my family, we are busy. This was a normal weekend. 3 soccer games, 2 baseball games, 3 parties. Whether they wear a mask or not, that's what families are doing on the weekend. So the couple hours in school ain't going to change nothing. If it's going to move, it's going to move. But here's the cool thing. You're going to be okay. Because hospital beds, 3.4% of all the hospitals in all of the county are full. People aren't getting deathly ill anymore. That doesn't mean no one is, because unfortunately, 5 people passed away in May. The whole month of May, only 5 passed away. So it's still, you don't want people dying, but it's not what it used to be. As you go to vote, all I ask is that you not be hypocrites, okay? We've seen pictures on Facebook. I frankly, I have the pictures of people in December in a gym not wearing a mask. And people in 2011, I'm gonna be done in 1 second. People in 2011 at a wedding with mask in the background, they're not wearing masks. Of people who come to every other board meeting with a cloth mask, but anytime there's a mask vote, they wear a KN95 mask. I don't share these pictures because I want us to come back together.
Mr. Hope, if you can finish up.
I'm wrapping
please.
right now. At some point, we're going to bring them back to, if you don't stop being hypocrites and start doing what's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mina Albanese.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mina Albanese. I've been a member of this community for 17 years. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your commitment to this board and to this school. I have a daughter currently in 8th grade. I also have an older daughter who graduated in 2020. Now, in 2020, it was very scary. It was unknown. So I'm asking you, with all the data we have now, and the virus has changed, for you to reconsider your metrics. 2 points I want you to consider. Due to the conditions of the mask and the high humidity and temperature created in the respiration cycle, it'll lead to steam in these masks. That's going to pull in more particulate of the virus. We have to think about that. It will. Second, transmission is not simply a function of short interactions with individuals. It's the concentration in the air. If you have a large concentration of particulate, that's how it's starting to spread. So I ask you, maybe we should focus on air, the flow, your building facilities, not really the mask when you know these kids are not even wearing them appropriately. We know they're scrunched in, the sides are open, the air's coming in. So I ask you to reconsider your vote. I ask you to do this for our children, maybe some of your children. I ask you to do that for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ella Rober.
Hi, I am Ella Rober and I'm in 4th grade. I think that kids should have a choice to choose if they want to wear a mask or not. They should see other kids smiling. People should be happy and see others' smiles, not be unhappy and have sad faces. We want to have choices. We get sick because of masks and we get rashes from masks. So I think that we should not have masks, and I know I am not the only one. We all want to speak, and a lot of us want optional. So please make it optional for us. If you make it optional, we get to choose what we want. Please vote for optional and make it fair.
Thank you. Wraps up any of this. Is there anybody in the audience that still has not? Oh, excuse me. Our next speaker is Ben Birnbaum.
Articulate as most people have been speaking tonight, but I am a product of Lower Moreland. I graduated in '96. The school district has taught me how to think for myself, think of others. That's what the school district did. That's why I'm back. I have a child in Pine Road. I have a child in Mary Avenue. We have a vote for a mandate for a mask tonight. I asked my child before I left today from Mary Avenue, was she wearing a mask? Yes, Daddy, I had the mask, but it wasn't on. Half of us wore it, half didn't. The teacher didn't bother us. I'm like, okay. Now, my wife would say, maybe you should wear the mask because that's what you're told to do. I would say, well, maybe you don't need to wear a mask. This school district, this community is very strong. Being a strong community does help everybody. Give me a second. If a mask mandate vote is approved, you're going to have a parent after parent after parent just file an emergency motion with a court to stall the mask mandate because there is no mask mandate in the state. The problem is, do we really want to put our time and effort of 14 days, 16 days into try to fight something that could be something or nothing with an emergency stop by a judge? This community can handle that. You guys can handle it. We don't need the solicitor's time eaten up by this. We have other things we're doing. We're building a new high school. We're building other things. We're making this community huge. And there's more kids coming in because they want to be here. I came back. I don't know, is anybody else a product of Lower Moreland? What year? 03. Okay, I'm 96. There's a lot more of us that came back. Lance Wilbransky, I graduated with him in 96. One of my best friends. So, mass mandate, if you want to have a vote, that's fine. Just be careful of the backlash. Do we really want to tie up our funds and our resources? Because the communities, individuals can keep going against it. Doesn't seem worth the value. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our, excuse me. Or let's do a last call on public comment. Anybody else? Okay. So one more.
Can you hear me? Okay. I wasn't going to speak because I've spoken so many times before. But I wanted to make this one point clear to you guys. I haven't agreed with everything the CDC and Monco Health Department has recommended throughout this pandemic. That's why I pulled my kids from this school and they go to school in private school in Bucks County. But throughout this pandemic, this board, specifically 5 members, have claimed and clinged to the fact that you were doing what the CDC and Monco Health Department were recommending. And you were doing what they said, and it was them making the call. Now you don't have a leg to stand on. Every other district in this community is mask optional. Every other district in Montgomery County is mask optional. You know, you don't just look like hypocrites on your Facebook pages. You look like hypocrites from what you've said in the past and what you've committed to in the past and what you've done now. You've pushed parents too far. And parents are choosing the health, whether it is the mental, the social, the emotional health of their children over the rules. And you've lost complete control. And you're putting so much stress on the educators and the administrators in the school buildings by these choices and by not following the local government public health. If people have health issues and want to wear a mask, there are masks and 95 masks to protect the wearer. And everybody from the top of the government down is saying that it has become a personal choice. You have wasted so much of our time as parents. We are exhausted, exhausted. We are paying and taking our kids to therapy, trying to get over what you've done the last 2 years by keeping them out of school and by keeping them in masks. I beg you, hopefully for the last time, to let parents make medical decisions for their own children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That was Elizabeth Covalita. And why don't you come right to the microphone, just state your name for us, please.
Hi, my name is Yuri Robert. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just want to enlighten one point. There's a definite division in the community. There's a division in the country. And the board is in the difficult position between 2 camps, which seems like very difficult to find a common ground. But I hope there is a way, and there should be money, there should be enough tools available to try to help people to come together. On the contrary, you can put additional gasoline on the low fire and make it burning much higher. But I hope you'll make the right decision. I've heard once about maybe the option to bringing back virtual learning. Maybe the parts that don't want to come to school while other people are in the school, they can learn distantly, and you can have some kind of rotation until everybody feels comfortable to come together. And I also afraid that what we have here now is the repetition before the same picture that we may have at the beginning of the next year. So for the parents, prepare for the next round. And for the school board, I really hope that you'll be able to find the common ground and help us to come together, or maybe get washed away at some point by people's anger. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the last of our speakers? Could you state your name for us, please?
Hi, I'm Allison Zaleski. I'm a senior at the high school. I think masks should be optional. I'm a senior. I've made it through all 4 years, 3 of which have not been normal. Nobody's lived through these times except us if you've been to school these last 2+ years. My graduation and prom are coming up, and I've made it this far, and I deserve to not wear a mask at my senior prom or one of the biggest milestones in my life, my graduation. Times have evolved, and we've taken a step in the right direction, but what was just implemented today at our districts, we've taken a step backwards in the wrong direction. Please consider making masks optional. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Emma Cooper. I'm a junior here at the high school, and I haven't had a normal year since 8th grade at Murray Avenue. I've been at this district since kindergarten, and I'm also part of the deaf community. I am 100% deaf in my left ear, and these past 2 years have been extremely hard for me dealing with that. I rely things from my teachers like lip reading and sitting close for them, and the masks really make that hard for me just to listen to simple instructions and not to be able to hear my teachers. I completely understand the side of having to wear a mask, and that's completely up to you. But for people like me, it's just not beneficial to me. And this has been going on for over 2 years, and I've experienced all the effects of the virus, from online learning to sitting in the auditorium instead of the cafeteria and not being able to talk to my friends in school. So as a member of the deaf community and of this high school, I'm experiencing the real effects of what masks can do for others. There are 14 days left of school, and many events such as a class trip to Hershey Park, prom, and graduation, which me and many students will be affected by, and we don't want to have to go to these events with these mandates. So I hope you will take all of this into consideration and make masks optional. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe that concludes public comment for this evening. Mrs. Baker?
I'm going to open up discussion for the board. I will ask each person before they speak so I can address them first. And please do not speak over any other person. So would anyone like to go first?
I have a question. Just to clarify, when we adopted the CDC guidelines, the new CDC guidelines, at the same time, we said that the guidelines would apply to everybody. Anybody who comes into the building, regardless of whether they're visitors or students or staff, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, so if we make masks optional, that's for anybody who enters the building, they're optional. And if we make it mandatory, then it's mandatory for anybody who enters the building, correct?
Yes, the way you approved the plan back in March was to identify, the board voted if it reached high, any staff member, member from the public, any student would mask in high. That's the motion you took, and that's what's in the current plan now.
Can that be changed?
we were in medium and low, it applied universally as well to any public member, any student, that there was no requirement. That's how the board had approved the plan.
Right, so if we made it only recommended, it would be only recommended for anybody who enters the building.
That would be correct, unless you adopted some more specific language that differentiated to whom you wanted to put more restrictions on or less restrictions on.
So excuse me, we have the ability to change that so that if we were to make a highly recommended program instead of a mandatory program, would we have the authority to differentiate amongst visitors into the building?
Yes.
I would like to make a comment. I have lived in the district for 52 years. My children went through Lower Moreland. I have 2 grandchildren who graduated from Lower Moreland, and I have 2 grandchildren currently in 6th and 9th grades. I have no agenda of any type other than trying to protect not only my grandchildren, but basically what I feel is important. The guidelines that I try to follow are what I basically vote for. I wear a mask and I'm addressing these issues because some of the speakers basically were saying that the board basically does not follow what they preach. I wear a mask wherever I go, even the barber shop, any place I go, and usually I don't go any place except eating outside when I'm able to. I have not been in a restaurant in 2.5 years. I don't go to any shows anymore. That is my choice, and I believe it's true. I do understand all the parents and their concerns, and I know it can have a detrimental effect on their children because it's not fun to wear masks. It was also implicated that we wear masks that are not KN95 when we have board meetings, and some board members only wear cloth masks. I don't know if that's true, but I have always worn a K95 mask.
Camille, I'd like to speak if nobody else
do
would like the
believe
floor.
in the mandate, but I understand it's also difficult to enforce it based on conversations that I have. So when I vote tonight, I am not voting against anyone in the community, nor I am voting for anyone in the community. I'm voting my conscience, whatever that may be. Thank you.
Since Murray mentioned enforcement, I'd like to comment about that because we began this meeting by saying that everyone in the audience and everyone who comes up to speak should be wearing a mask. Yet person after person who came up to speak without a mask, not a single person was told to put a mask on. So I think when it comes to enforcement, I know it's difficult. I know it's an unruly monster, but there has to be some effort. If you want to enforce it, you have to at least put some effort into enforcing it.
Camille, can I have the floor?
Yes.
Well, Carroll, I guess you could have asked somebody to put a mask on.
They're the meeting.
I just want to address some of the speakers' comments as Mary did. I don't know that anybody here has a political agenda. If they do, that's shame on them. I have 3 daughters in the school, so to think that my agenda is to not care about anybody's children and not my own, I'm not going to make decisions that are going to harm my own children without regard for everybody's children. I think I've made that clear in the past. You can't light up a cigarette in that auditorium because there are specific Pennsylvania laws that prohibit you from smoking in that auditorium. I just don't know how we enforce something that's not a law. We've put our administration, our superintendent, and our staff and teachers in a very precarious situation by asking them to do something that is not A, in their job description, and B, an enforceable law. And I'm going to ask Dr. David Heiser to maybe speak to that in just a second. But before I do, I'm just going to answer one more thing. Mary, I believe you and I have run into each other in restaurants in the past 2 years, so we have eaten out together. I'm not bringing that up because I want to make any light of it. Everybody's watching us and everybody sees what we do. And if we make mistakes, that's fine. We can admit to our mistakes, but we've all been out. We've all been living our lives. To think for 1 second that putting masks, my daughter, my 5-year-old, my 5th grader has been wearing the same mask since the COVID has started. There's not much left of it. It's not cloth. It's not a KN95. She has severe anxiety and OCD. And if I tried to take that away from her, it would be very damaging to her. So the mask that she's been wearing every day, even underneath the mandates, is really useless. And I think most of the children are just going through the motions with regard to these masks. And with regard to the masks, I think it's important to point out that when there were true mandates, law mandates by the governor, we followed those. I would say that we had almost 100%, compliance to that. I don't think we live in a world where our students are rogue to the point where they don't listen to authority. I know that I personally have worn a mask when I've been asked to wear a mask. I've worn them in restaurants to walk in. I've worn them on airplanes. I've worn them on trains. I've worn them in school board meetings. And when it was time to take them off and we were in the low where we could take them off, I chose to take it off. There are people in this room who chose to wear a mask even in the lowest category, and that's their option, their decision to do. So I just want to maybe at this point ask Dr. David Heiser to comment on why it's so difficult for our staff, for our administration, maybe the solicitor can even get involved as to why it's so difficult to enforce this mandate that is not part of the CDC. It's not part of Montgomery County Office of Public Health. It was motioned by Murray Cohen, seconded by Carroll Natter, and then approved 5-4. This is nobody's rule but ours. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. David Heiser.
There's an expression, and I'm a downhill skier, and there's an expression in skiing where they say sometimes you get out over the tips of your skis, and not a lot of good things happen when that occurs. You typically fall, and there's a pretty big wipeout. I think what you're seeing in the last couple of days is a lot of districts, who've backed off their mandates and requirements that they pushed out on Friday, quickly turn those back because of the idea that, as Mr. Berardi had said, and there's others that have said this tonight, all the policies that you as a board make are grounded in law. They're grounded in the Constitution, they're grounded in local laws. They're grounded in those. If you ever look those policies up, they're all footnoted quite specifically. All the administrative regulations, such as dress codes and things that are in our handbook, come out of those policies. So inherently, they're all guided by law. They're all guided by local, federal, state laws. There's backing to them. There's teeth to those. The CDC has operated really outside of their transportation order with no mandates throughout this whole pandemic. The governor's order was an order that had to be followed. There are no longer right now any federal, state, or local laws governing this, governing mandates related to the pandemic. Likewise, there's no health agencies, federally, state, or local, or Montgomery Office of Public Health that has that mandate as well. So it puts a school district into a precarious situation where when you create a mandate, you create a requirement. It's difficult to administrate that on a day-to-day basis. When I spoke to you back in March about that, I trying to foreshadow a little bit of the things. And little did I know it was going to happen this quickly. I was thinking more of this was October, November in the fall when another variant would come and we'd have to be dealing with this. Really recommending against putting in those types of things because we don't have the backing of law. The process is not there to be able to establish that. And it puts our school district on an island to a certain extent where you as health officials, or excuse me, as board officials, have had to make a lot of health decisions over the past 2.5 years, but those things have now been lifted away from you. And I think it's an opportunity for you as a board. That's a great opportunity to allow the guidance coming from the health agencies, none of which have a mandate or requirement to them. And this is an opportunity to follow that. The CDC clearly says wear a mask and hide. There's no adjective or adverb in front of that in any way, shape, or form. And that can be interpreted a lot of different ways, but the facts are the words are wear a mask. The recommendation that the administration has had through this since the community indicators are allow that to be a recommendation to wear a mask and highly recommend that for our school community. I'm a very big advocate that you get more bees with honey than not. And I think really applying some empathy toward this is a situation we're in high. We need your help for the next few weeks. This is a great opportunity for us to come together as a community, help everyone in that situation to try and wear a mask and to protect others. We won't have 100% compliance, but I think there's going to be probably some outpouring of individuals that will want to assist at a time when maybe they thought maybe I wasn't going to do it, but maybe I'm going to help now because there's a situation. I think that'd be a great opportunity for our school district to do that. The moment we start applying outside of any backing of any laws or any types of governmental or health agencies that are the experts in the field to which we should be gaining our information from, it makes it very, very difficult when you back people into corners when you start mandating and requiring, and we often get less participation when that happens. And I think we found that out today. We did not have very good participation in that, most especially at our secondary level, which I think we as administrators had planned for. And we did address those things. You as a board put together and approved a plan back in March that said if we go to high, and we communicated that on Friday to the community, and we met with our staff, we met with our administrators all weekend about applying that, but trying to do it in a diligent way that would allow us to message that, but doing it in the most sincere way. And we didn't have great participation, but we addressed the things because we work at the will of the board. And overall, the feedback, from buildings where it was a quiet day, but it wasn't a very successful day when it comes to the types of things that you're asking our staff and our community to do right now. And so I think we're in a very precarious situation. We have seen most of the school district in Montgomery County. There are a couple left. I know most have said it's everybody. There's a few that are hanging in there. I think Cheltenham had a meeting this evening. I think Jenkintown still is, but most, and Norristown, I think still is, most in our sending area to the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology have moved that. And really speaking to all those superintendents, it's a really difficult thing to defend for them, for their solicitors, and it made more sense for them to move to a still highly recommend to do it. Let's come together. It's a great opportunity. We're going to see 2 or 3 times probably next school year where we're going to see a variant in place. And the variant's going to spike up and it's going to place some pressure on all sorts of schools and communities. I mean, a great opportunity for the community to help one another and do those types of things. I think the application of mandates and requirements right now are going to continue to make it a very tumultuous situation in our school district and our community, not just for these next 14 days, but I'm looking forward into next year. And what does that mean if that's still in place? Every time that a variant comes, we're going to be dealing with this same similar drama of the outfall of some of the decisions here. So I think it's wise to look at this from I'm looking at it and trying to forecast the now, but also forecast the future. And there's an opportunity for us to, I believe, probably have as many people that are willing to help out and wear masks, give folks the choice and the comfortable ability to do that. We do have a lot of other things in place right now with regard to boosters and vaccines and things that we didn't have in place when masks were the only thing. They're still a part of what we do and can do, but there's a choice to some of that I would recommend to the board that you really consider in thinking about tonight with the masking and not making that a requirement of folks to do. We didn't see success with it now, and I don't expect to see success with it in the future. Not that we wouldn't try to do it all and do everything associated to it, but I think we're 2.5 years into that, and I think mindsets have changed considerably with regard to that. And I think it's an opportunity for us to shift a little bit to make that. So I know, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, Mr. Berardi, in terms of the commentary that you would ask for with.
I was just wanted some clarity as to why it is so difficult to enforce it. We've received a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls over the weekend since Friday, and there seems to be this conception that it's just so easily enforceable, and it's just not. And I've had conversations with you, I've had conversations with attorneys, I've had conversations with solicitors, not only in our district but through the MCIU. And the theme seems to be that it's not enforceable, not because we don't want to enforce it. We just don't have the backing of litigation or law or legal precedents to enforce it. So we're putting our staff and our administration in a very difficult situation, which in turn puts our students and their families in a difficult situation. And we've seen that through the speakers. We've seen that through the numerous emails we've gotten. We've seen that through the way that it was handled today. And, instead of, as a student, as a child, we can all think back, the best time of school was always the last couple of weeks of school. And it breaks my heart to think that these next, 2.5 weeks, instead of being the best part of the school year, are going to be the worst part of the school year for our students. So, but yes, you did answer my question.
Dr. David Heiser, is it a law that we provide safe schools and a safe learning environment?
Mr. Khan, you want to take that one?
As a general statement, yes. And
I think
so my answer to this issue is going to be nuanced. Bear with me. The school administration, board of directors setting policy, in my view and the view of our firm, has the authority to set rules around safety. The only specific reference, there is actually a specific section in the school code around dress code. But the only, let's take, for example, running in the hallway. You are permitted to prohibit running in the hallway. And the only grounds you will find in the school code for that prohibition is the old-fashioned word, comportment. You are allowed to set rules around the comportment of your students. So the nuance here is this. Our firm takes the position that you cannot exclude a student from school. There's nothing special about a mask policy that would allow you to exclude a student from school. You could, however, I said it was nuanced. You could, however, make a rule and then treat it like any other rule of conduct, which would require the administration to go through the process. I'll use the phrase progressive discipline, right? You can't say you can't come in and get educated, you can't go to class. You would have to give a warning and then track it and then give a written warning and maybe a detention and then several detentions. And then I guess ultimately, if there were persistent refusal, you might or might not be able to expel a student. But so there's no special authority around masks that allows you to exclude kids. I do think the school has the authority, legal authority, to make rules around student safety. And, you know, but it does get messy.
I'd like to, Camille,
Sure.
can I go?
Sure.
Or do you want to go? Okay. A lot of talk of, politics and all that thing, we've heard a lot. And I spent a lot of time on the CDC website today, even on the Montgo website. And I just want to, I'm a fact-driven person. I just want people to know that, 78% of our total Montgomery County population, about 860,000 people, are fully vaccinated. 5 years and older, it goes up to 83%, then 12 years and older, 86, 86 for 18 and over. So high numbers. And then we had, for 2 years, August of 2020 to February of 22, a mask mandate policy. And to my knowledge, we've had probably 95, 98, just a high degree of following that policy. So I would say that's pretty successful. I'd say whatever your politics are, which we don't bring to the board, that's pretty darn close, right? When you almost get 95% of the people doing it for the public safety. And we've done that. We've done it for a very long time. So that's just the number. So why are we even here tonight? Like, if this was May 10th, we wouldn't even be talking. The reason why we're here tonight is the CDC came out with new guidelines, and they were supposed to tie the hospitalizations with the COVID numbers. So last week, the new COVID-19 admissions per 100,000 over 7-day total went to 10.2. And that threw it into high. The number that the CDC puts down is greater than 10. And then the other indicator is the percent of staffed inpatient beds in use by COVID patients. The CDC said 10% or over. And then their logic is it's determined by the higher of the two, of either new admissions or inpatient beds. Well, the higher of the two is the 10.2. So you're saying to me, out of 860,000 people in this county, of which we're about 2% of it, right? 12, 13,000 people, that if instead of 9.2, it's 10.2 of one person is admitted into Montgomery County Hospital, that we are now mandating masks. The CDC recommendation back then was a little bit vague, right? Because it had low, moderate, substantial, high. And substantial was like 51 to 99. Well, we were seeing COVID numbers go from 500 to 1,000 in a week. So what did a range of 50 really do? It did nothing. It was irrelevant. So they realized that, and then they came out with 3 divisions instead of 4. But I didn't want the mandate because I still didn't know if this high was really relevant to us. And to me, looking at the data today, the fact that it's 10.2 is why we're here. Well, what happens, ladies and gentlemen, if we are 9.8 next week? Does that mean mask off? And then if we're 10.6 the week after, is it back on? Is it going to be up and down if we keep this policy? That makes no sense to me at all. And that's just from a number standpoint. That's just from a data standpoint. And I don't know how the children are affected in any other way than if 10 people or 11 people are admitted for 860,000 over 7-day total. So I'm really struggling with the COVID high. And then, of course, as we've heard tonight, that, you know, I'll read the Montgomery County Office of Public Health basically says this. It says, masks indoor public setting is recommended for all individuals at the high community COVID level. So that's from our own Montgomery County. So it's really challenging, though, to take, you know, this to say, okay, 10.2, that's high. You know, it seems too arbitrary to me. It just seems too arbitrary to do that. So I just wanted to make those facts known about the numbers and why we're even here discussing this. And 2 weeks ago, we're not discussing it because the number was probably 8 or probably 7. And now it's 10.2. And then all, you know what, broke loose when it went to 10.2. And I think we're better than that. And I think we proved by like 95% vaccination rate or 80% vaccination rate with the compliance that we've had for 2 years, we're a lot more aligned and closer than we are apart.
Steve, 2 points that you're missing with regards to those statistics. One is the case counts, right? So the first thing you look at is how many cases per 100,000. So you only even look at the medium and high category if you get over 200 cases per 100,000. So when case counts are low and community spread is not high, those other hospital numbers don't even come into play. It's when those case counts get so high. The second thing is what we call exponential growth. So yes, oh, it was low and now it's a little higher. The concern is that things don't rise in a linear fashion when things are spreading this rapidly. You can go from just a few people to an exponential amount of people in a very short period of time. So saying, oh, we're only at 10.2 today, yeah, we're right on the borderline, that's great. And hopefully we stay there, hopefully we go below that, and there's a good chance we will. But the risk is, as disease spread is high, if we don't do everything we can to limit it, that cases will explode back to the point where people are dying, people can't get into hospitals for other reasons. That's all.
Well, that's why I cited the vaccination rates, because one of the things that it's been 2 years, one of the things that we've been blessed to have is incredible efficacy of our vaccinations. And if we have 86% of our population over 18 and over that's fully vaccinated, that is why our percent of staffed inpatient bed use is 3% and not higher. It's because we're vaccinated. And we've heard some other statistics about, you know, people having COVID. So now they might be more, you know, stronger antibodies to it. But if they're really tying the hospitalizations with the numbers, then they really should focus on, you know, there should be focus on the inpatient beds. And right now we're 1/3 below the 10% number. So we could have more patients. We're going to get more cases, and we're definitely going to see more cases in the fall. But if we're going to just, as we've been doing, is become more immune, you know, where we've developed more antibodies for it, then the case number is kind of, you know, I don't want to say irrelevant, but it doesn't mean we have to mandate the mask.
Ms. Baker.
Dr. Lee?
I prepared a few comments. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the members of the board that the CDC and the Montgomery County Office of Public Health guidelines have not changed since they were discussed at length at our March 15th public meeting. The March 11th, 2022 MCOPH guidance for COVID prevention in K-12 settings still states, MCOPH recommends that schools implement masking recommendations or requirements for all when Montgomery County COVID-19 community level is high. Unfairly or not, decisions as to how to implement these guidelines have been left to local districts. At our March 15th public meeting, we had that discourse and we had that vote. We were well within our right to amend the language to require masks only during high community levels, with the aim of giving our community the best chance to return to medium and low levels as soon as possible. What has changed? Not the scientific guidance from the CDC nor from the MCOPH. What has become apparent is that our current health and safety plan is in the minority of most county districts and explicitly requiring masks. Instead, language to strongly encourage masking has been utilized by many districts, in my view, driven by concerns over the enforceability of any mask mandate. In fact, as the board will recall, Dr. David Heiser quite clearly and dramatically expressed similar concerns at our March 1st work session. I acknowledge we are in the minority, and I do acknowledge the difficulty in enforcing a mask mandate. But what most concerns me is what is driving this difficulty in enforcement. Indeed, it is difficult to enforce masking when a minority but vocal portion of our community advocates and plans for the deliberate disregard of the rules. This unfairly puts our teachers and administrators in incredibly difficult situations. It is difficult to enforce masking when the presumed prevailing thinking is to never go back to requiring masks, no matter what level of CDC metric we find ourselves in, no matter how dangerous COVID or its variants may be in the future. It is difficult to enforce masking when the community is no longer felt capable of adjusting our way of thinking and behavior, no longer capable of accepting a period of inconvenience and discomfort to help ensure those most at risk are safe, and no longer capable of prioritizing the community over the personal, even temporarily. At present, I unfortunately feel we have lost sight of this capacity. However, I also believe that it is our responsibility and that of the administration we oversee to continue to seek and develop mutually agreeable solutions and to not convey a sense of powerlessness in the face of adversity, to enforce our policies no matter how difficult, and most importantly, to engender a community that values the ideas of personal sacrifice for the greater community good, especially when needed the most. I support keeping our approved health and safety language as is. I just think it's the right thing to do. I will also respect and support whatever majority decision is made by the board tonight. Thanks.
Mrs. Snyder, I'd like to address your concern about not enforcing masks in the audience. I felt that it was more important to hear the messages from the audience. It is a request that everyone wear a mask. Normally I do not, but out of high regard for our board, as a member and also as the president, I will always follow every board action. And the board action was to begin wearing masks, and that's why I'm wearing one. But I would ask that, people wear masks. Is there a way for me to enforce each one? There was not. I was hoping that people would come and be more open about that because it is respect for the board, but they did not. And I felt that it was more important to hear their messages because then everybody's felt that their feelings have been and their opinions have been heard. So that's why I had gone that route.
Camille, may I speak?
Yes.
All right, sorry, I don't want to make him sound like Mother May I, but being virtual like this, it's a little difficult. We make these rules. When I say we, the board, this is the board's rule, and we expect other people to enforce them. James Lee, out of the 30 people that spoke, 23 of them did not have a mask on. The majority spoke right behind you. How many of them did you ask to put a mask on? That's a question for you, James Lee.
I don't think it's up to Dr. Lee to enforce that. He has a chairman of the board here.
We made the law. We made the law. We, as a board, we made the law.
And we don't.
We want somebody else to enforce it.
Speakers.
I'm sorry. I didn't know I was talking to John Butler. I thought I was talking to James Lee.
Mr. Berardi, I don't think it's reasonable for us as a board to be enforcing that. I think we're trying to.
But it's reasonable to ask our superintendent to enforce it on 2,600 students.
I'm going to really ask you to stop.
Okay.
Everyone has the right.
It was a
to be
question.
heard.
If somebody would have answered it, it would have been done already. And my other question is, we're quoting all these CDC metrics, yet we're not following the CDC guidelines. If we're not going to follow the CDC guidelines, then I don't think we should follow the CDC metrics. If we want to change the CDC language with regard to masking, then we should change the level of high to a different metric that is more appropriate to what we think is good for our students in our school district.
Mr. Berardi, may I speak on that?
Yes, please.
It is not any other board member's duty to quell anyone else or to ask them to wear a mask. So I disagree with you there.
Okay, that's your right to disagree.
May I speak? Whether we like it or not, it is up to the 9 of us to decide what is going to happen in the health and safety plan. I've expressed this before. I don't like that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Our decision-making should not usurp that of a parent or guardian making decisions for their own child. We should be making recommendations and supporting our administration, not mandates. Obviously, I'm not wearing a mask now. That's not because I'm trying to cause an uprising or because I'm, a rebel or anything, or because I don't think that rules should be followed. If anything, those that know me would probably describe me as by the book. But I do have a problem following rules that frankly don't make sense, and in this case are not in line with CDC guidelines. Here's a list of places my children can go without a mask. Any store they want to. A trampoline park, a professional sporting event, even indoors, an airplane, Disney World. But school, nope, they have to wear a mask there if they live in Lower Moreland. Also, if they happen to live in Lower Moreland and go to ECAT, then they don't have to wear a mask there, but they do when they come back to Lower Moreland. It's just confusing. There's no proven way to stop the spread of this virus, including masking. Even the most staunch individuals who practice masking at all times have recently contracted the virus. As has always been the case, the best way to stop the spread is proper hand washing and keeping your children home from school when they are sick. I'd also like to take a moment and address the division this is causing. I think we all recognize that. The atmosphere in our community is caustic, and it's coming from both those in favor of masks and those opposed. But it's also not realistic to a certain extent. There are plenty of people I know that are still in favor of masking, even though I am not. Friends, family, coworkers, and our relationships haven't changed because of those differences. That's actually the reason we're here tonight. I know that other board members are upset about the division too. Let's help this to go away. Let's change the wording to strongly recommend when we're at the high level. Please, please, please do this. Almost all of the surrounding districts in Montgomery County have adjusted their policies over these last few days, and we should be doing the same. Thank you.
Mrs. Natter?
I would just like to address two comments that keep being made. First of all, about all the other places you can go without a mask. I think school presents a very unique situation in that, especially in the elementary schools, children are sitting in the same room for 6 to 7 hours next to the same child. And if you're spending 6 to 7 hours next to the same person without a mask, that's a different situation than walking into a store and walking out.
Do you work at a school?
I work in a hospital.
Not
But
a school though,
I
right?
went to school my entire life, and my children went to school, and I'm aware that they were in the same classroom for that many hours.
I work in a school every day where students don't wear masks, and it's not a problem.
You don't think it is?
It's not. Everyone is fine.
I could beg to differ. The other issue was about a parent's personal freedom about their child's medical decisions. However, if a child comes to school with pink eye, it's not the parent's decision whether they stay in school or not. They're sent home. That's not the parent's choice. They have to go home. If a child comes to school with head lice, they're sent home. They're isolated immediately and sent home. That's not the parent's choice. If a child's sitting in school with a fever, it's not the parent's choice. They're sent home. And it's a similar situation that if a child is sitting there without a mask and could be spreading COVID to their peers, that also shouldn't be the parent's choice whether they want to do that or not. And I don't think any parent here would intentionally harm another child, but that's what's happening, is that other children could be harmed. And that's why it's not a personal choice.
Okay, there is no comment from the audience. You had an opportunity before. This is a board discussion. Are there any other comments? Anyone else like to share? Mr. Steinberg, did you have a question? Mr. Steinberg? Please
I'm
be
sorry?
respectful. Sorry, did you have a question? I was wondering.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Did you have a question or a comment?
I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Baker,
Yes, Ms. Brody.
if there are no more other comments, I'd like to make a motion to amend our current health and safety plan to align ourselves with the CDC and the Montgomery County Office of Public Health to strongly recommend masking in the high, as well as returning our lunch spaces back to normal.
Dr. Butler?
Thank you. The CDC guidelines. say-
Dr. Butler, before any discussion, there needs to be a second.
I second the motion.
Dr. Butler? Any questions or comments, Dr. Butler?
No, I just don't understand why we keep saying we're not following the CDC guidelines. The CDC guidelines are in times of high community transmission, wear a mask. It says wear a mask. Doesn't say recommend, it says wear a mask in times of high community transmission.
And that is my motion is to strongly recommend to wear a mask.
I would advocate that we keep distancing. We need mitigation efforts in place during situations of high community transmission. It makes no sense to abandon all mitigation efforts.
I'd like to have a moment of your time. As board president, I very rarely give my opinion. I usually wait until the last vote, but I do have some things that I'd like to discuss. I feel that by the administration not being able to effectively enforce erodes authority from a student to a teacher and to authority. I believe that I believe these measures can be enforced. I think it takes an inordinate amount of time from administration to do that. And I think that takes away from the educational process in schools. And I think the biggest, my biggest concern is I am not an anti-masker. I wear a mask when I'm supposed to, but I feel that masking is one of a strong mitigation procedure. However, I feel that should be used judiciously because it is a very, very important weapon against a disease. And I feel that it should be used when a strong variant comes in. God forbid we ever have another very strong variant of a form of a Delta or something similar to that, or something even stronger. I would want the process of speaking to people and asking them to mask up, and that we would have compliance for that. I think, I worry that using a mask is very, very important, but it should be used as a weapon, like I said, against a disease. And not, I think when people become weary of it, they lose respect for the fact that a mask is important. And that down the road, when we have another serious disease, people are less likely to follow a guideline because they've lost respect for that process. And I do, that is my biggest concern about that. I will follow all the procedures from the board. I am highly respectful of this board. I know every member on it. If the masks continue, I will support that as a board member and a board president, because that is a board action. We are all part of a board, and it's our duty to do that. So I just want to share that I very, very rarely ever give my opinion, because I don't feel that I should as a board president. This is just, I feel that we've traveled a long distance with COVID for over 2.5 years. As an educator, I've been there since day one of when schools had to close. That was so dramatic. I've seen children through the process, and I'm not even speaking about masking. I'm saying of what that was like. It was a scary process for children. And I think as an educator, I see that the distancing, that as another mitigation procedure, that should be used sparingly as well, because it is a strong mitigation. In my own classroom, I insisted on 6 feet when children were walking in lines, when they were seated at their desks. We had masks on all the time. So I'm very respectful of rules. I was raised with rules. A rule is something to be followed. So if the board follows in one direction or the other, I will follow that. And I ask each board member to vote how they feel that they should vote. And we will all respect the process after that. Thank you.
And Madam President,
I
before
may
there was
make a
vote on this-
comment. Mr. Berardi, I believe, made a motion. Can we add to his motion that strangers entering the building have to wear a mask?
I don't think we should be letting strangers in the buildings, but could you define
Yeah.
strangers?
Well, that would be my next question. How do we define a stranger? If a contractor comes in the building, should the contractor be wearing a mask?
Yeah, Mr. Steinberg, I'm going to recommend, given how close we are to the end of the student year, that if the motion on the table passes, that sometime during the summer, because I don't know how to define, it's not obvious how to define who your visitors are. Substitute teachers, a parent who comes in for a homeroom party, like we would need to nuance that, we would need to define who we are. You can do it, but I don't know that we have the language to do it tonight.
I would agree with that. I would like that to be put on an agenda to, number one, discuss the applicability of a stranger wearing a mask, and number two, to define what a stranger is.
And along those lines, before the board votes and for the benefit of mostly of the administration, we're talking about page 3 of the health and safety plan, and the motion would change subsection A, where it says hi. The phrase in parentheses, mask required, would be removed. The bullet point underneath that would be, the district will strongly recommend the wearing of masks indoors in public. And then the phrase masks are required would be struck. The bottom of that same section, before you get to B, it would be my recommendation, if Mr. Berardi is comfortable with this, that the bottom of that sentence that starts additionally, instead of getting rid of the whole paragraph, will say, will be incorporated into this health and safety plan if a state or local order regarding mask wearing is imposed, so that you still have those exceptions built in. And then in subsection B, the last sentence would be struck.
I think we already do have that in, if a governing health agency mandates or orders practice of universal face coverings, no matter the risk level, the district will immediately require all stakeholders to adhere to this health requirement. So-
Right, but then you've incorporated the old version, section 3 for exceptions for when masks are ordered. And I'm saying, instead of getting rid of that, just change the last phrase of that to say it's only going to apply if a state or federal order comes in.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Before we vote, I just want to clarify again. So before we amend anything, then the option of wearing a mask is open to anybody. So that means that at graduation, if we're packed in shoulder to shoulder in the bleachers, or heaven forbid it rains for graduation and we're packed into the auditorium, masks are optional. No rules.
We will be in the auditorium for graduation. Graduation is hosted in the auditorium. We don't have the seating at the stadium for that type of size. So the
Okay,
graduation,
so this year it would be indoors, so
it has been
everybody
indoors
sitting
every
next to
year.
each other, it's optional. And I don't know what concerts or performances are left for the year, but that would be the same thing. Anyone who comes to a performance, totally optional if you're wearing a mask or not.
My motion is not to make masks optional. My motion is in the high to make masks strongly recommended. I would not like the word optional used.
It's strongly recommended. It's still left to the option of the individual, whether they wear it or not.
If that's how you perceive it, Ms. Natter, that's up to you, but I'm not asking to put the words optional into the motion. The motion says in the high that we strongly recommend you wear a mask indoors.
And when would we address my question concerning outsiders coming into the building?
I think, Mr. Steinberg, the recommendation from the solicitor was that we address that possibly in the summer or prior to the start of next school year. I would say that the term stranger is probably not the best term used. Guests that enter the building
Okay.
would be those individuals. And I think it's going to be very difficult to differentiate the amount of different people that aren't there on an everyday basis. One of the luxuries we have is that most guests that visit the building are not there and in any capacity near a child. They're oftentimes coming into the main office and going back right back out of the main office, most of which are for meetings with administrators or counselors. And there really isn't the impact to the building in a relationship to a student in any way, shape, or form. However, we can go down that path of trying to really differentiate which guests are and which guests aren't. I think it's somewhat faulty to consider which would be and which wouldn't be. I mean, we're talking about a virus that impacts and it has no walls and does not discriminate in any way, shape, or form. So I think, we can go a number of different directions, but I would suggest that if a motion is put through and it does pass, that we hold on that for the last 15 days. And we allow that to be universal to whomever attends to the buildings, inclusive of all of our staff and students that are there on a regular day basis.
And then my comment would be an agenda item for a later point.
That's correct. If I could just make, Ms. Baker, if you allow me to make any comment. I'm not a member of the board, but, prior to your decision here, part of this is functionality and reality of schools. The science is there behind a lot of the things that the board has discussed and talked about. There is also a reality to that. I don't ever speak of things dramatically in a way, and I've been accused of that. I talk about things and bring things to the board's attention in reality, not dramatically, but in reality. And the reality of those.
You mentioned having a policeman bring a student book out of the classroom forcibly. That was
So-
quite dramatic, in my opinion.
My job is to forecast for you as a board and to bring those. And I think there's a reality to, as we talked about, administrating this, not just at the administrative level for the teachers as well. It's a challenge to do, and it's very difficult being the mask police and an educator all at the same time, because the two don't work. They don't work well together in terms of the relation. We want to protect all the children. Children have an opportunity to help protect themselves as well. And additional spacing we've made when we did go back to lunchrooms, 6-foot spacing was made and accommodations were made for them. And I think there's opportunities to allow that for them to do. So it does become a challenge of functionality of schools. And as we look forward most experts are saying there's going to be multiple variants that will probably bubble up in various portions of the country and impact various portions of the country. And we have to be prepared for that, but not in the fashion that we're prepared for today, in the dramatic fashions that we're prepared for today, so that we can have a very common goal together as a community and a school community, so that people are moving forward in the same direction and recognizing when it is time to allow them to put masks on and so forth. So I think it's important to recognize the reality and functionality to be able to operate schools in a way that we desire, and that we desire in a successful way along that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. David Hauser. Are there any other comments, questions?
Mr. Khan, please clarify what you're proposing to be stricken from the policy.
It's all on page 3. So subsection A, you don't see subsection A on page 3. That's the bottom of page 2, but it continues onto the top of page 3, where the bullet point says high. The parentheses mask required would be struck. The bullet point below that would read, the school district shall strongly encourage the wearing of masks indoors in public. The word he used was recommend. The school district shall strongly recommend, or strongly recommends, the wearing of masks indoors in public. Then the bottom of A, the phrase that says will be incorporated into this health and safety plan if the county reaches the level high, would be changed to will be incorporated into this health and safety plan in the event of a state or federal mask order requiring the wearing of masks. And then in subsection B, the second half of his motion was essentially to strike the entire last sentence.
So to clarify, a few minutes ago, you said it was well within our rights as the board to make policy regarding safety. So are you saying that by putting in the clause that only in the setting of a state or federal law that masks would be required, that we would not have that ability?
That is how your health and safety plan will read if the amendment passes. You will retain your authority as a board to revisit that at any time. But if a state or federal order comes down regarding masks, of course you have to comply.
But the language is limiting. You're limiting it to
Oh.
only in the setting of a state or federal mandate.
Yes, but only because we've previously vetted that section 3, and it's consistent with what would be legally required for exceptions anyway, such as, for example, a student with an IEP or a Section 504 plan. That's why, but you're correct, and thank you for raising that point. Yes, that language is consistent with our obligations, even under the mandate that existed previously.
Are there any other last comments, questions?
Are you voting to strike the current policy first, or?
Madam President, there's a motion by Mr. Berardi, seconded by Mrs. Baker, to
Mrs.
amend the
Cannon.
current health and safety plan to strongly recommend the wearing of masks in high. That is the current motion that is on the floor.
So do you need to reflect this, Mrs. Cannon, not Mrs. Baker, with the second? Do you need to?
I apologize. This is Mrs. Cannon.
So we don't need to vote down the other, we just need to adopt this?
The motion and seconded on the floor is to amend the current health and safety plan. I believe what would be prudent would be a roll call vote to do such. If that vote fails, then the board either can adjourn with the current health and safety plan or make any other revisions.
Does the motion have the eating spaces as well?
Yes, it had all the other items that Mr. Khan had incorporated. I know Dr. David Heiser was writing that down, but that was the major part so that everyone understands. I would maybe ask all the other board members if they understand the motion and the second.
Does everyone understand all the, both portions?
Just to be clear, you're on section B, you're striking the last sentence, which it says all students would return to the 6-foot distancing. That's what's being strict. Yeah, I understand.
Okay, if there are no other comments or questions or concerns, we'll move to a vote. Ms. McGowan, would you take a roll call, please?
Certainly. Again, this is a vote to amend the current health and safety plan. Ms. Cannon,
Yes.
Dr. Lee,
I am voting no because I object to the 6-foot distancing being stricken. Otherwise, I would have voted yes.
I'm sorry, Dr. Lee, could you just, I couldn't hear, I'm sorry.
No.
Dr. Cohen. Dr. Cohen, could you please turn your microphone on?
Yes.
Dr. Butler,
No.
Mr. Geiger,
Yes.
Mr. Steinberg,
Yes.
Mrs. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Berardi,
Yes.
Mrs. Natter,
No.
Mrs. Baker, the motion passes 6-3.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
motion is adjourned.